you know what time it is? Woo! Get into it! Get into it! Yes! Hi! Hello, hello. Welcome back to Storytime with Chris. I apologize, I was a few minutes late. I just got back from the gym. Literally, I was able to shower, get cleaned up, and get ready to read to you all. And we are back. And we have 2 more weeks till Halloween. Which I'll make sure to post an event on Facebook later on, which, by the way, I don't own the music that you're listening to in the background, which is brought to you by Wagner. Wagner is an amazing composer. But, yes, this is my yerba mate. There's a funny story about this drink at work that we'll talk about at another time. I thought somebody had taken it from me or threw it out, forgetting and not realizing that I drank it all and didn't remember. And that's just what happens when you get older. So, on Halloween night, actually more so Halloween day, I will be reading Ray Bradbury's The Halloween Tree. I try to make it a tradition every year to read that story. It's one of my favorite stories, one of my favorite Halloween exploration stories. So definitely look out for that because Halloween is on a Monday this year. So I'm thusly assuming that I know everybody in town is going to be trick-or-treating, and of course I'll be passing out candy. But yes, I'm super excited. And then we will be starting our new book on Instagram tomorrow after the final chapter of Anne of Green Gables. And then we're back with Lloyd Alexander's The Book of Three. So, again, thank you all so very much for being patient with me. I'll take a quick sip. So I need a bit of an energy boost because, well, not entirely, because I'm like a wind-up toy. Just keep going. Excuse me. Oh, so delicious. And like always, my glasses are never clean. So I apologize. All right. So, the last time we were here within the story was the fact that Princess Ilanwe and their new companion Fluter Flam, the bard, and Taran and Gurgi have all been camping out in the woods because Akren, the witch sorceress, her castle fell to pieces. And now they're trying to devise a way in order to send help and to get some type of assistance and figure out the whereabouts of Prince Gwydion. And we're going to find out what happens next. Chapter 10. The Sword, Dernwyn. It was full daylight when Taran opened his eyes. Gurgi was already sniffing hungrily at the saddlebags. Taran rose quickly and shared out as much of the remaining provisions as he dared, keeping a small amount in reserve since he had no idea how difficult it would be to find food during the coming journey. In the course of the restless night he had reached his destination, though at present he refrained from speaking of it, still unsure he had chosen wisely. For the moment he concentrated on a meager breakfast. Oh, okay. Gurgi, sitting cross-legged, devoured his food with so many outcries of pleasure and loud smackings of his lips that he seemed to be eating twice as much as he really did. Fluder bolted his scant portion as though he had not enjoyed a meal for at least 5 days. Ilanwe was more interested in the sword she had taken from the burrow. It lay across her knees, and with a perplexed frown, the tip of her tongue between her lips, the girl was studying the weapon curiously. As Taran drew near, Ilanwe snatched the sword away. Well, said Tard with a laugh, you needn't act as if I were going to steal it from you. Although jewels studded the hilt and pommel, the scabbard was battered, discolored, nearly black with age. For all that, it had an air of ancient lineage, and Tard was eager to hold it. Come, he said, let me see the blade. I dare not, cried Eilonwy to Tard's great surprise. He saw that her face was solemn and almost fearful. There is a symbol of power on the scabbard, Eilonwy continued. I've seen this mark before on some of Ockren's things. It always means something forbidden. Of course, all Ockren's things are like that, but some are more forbidden than others. There's another inscription, too, said Eilonwy, frowning again, but it's in the old writing. She stamped her foot. Oh, I do wish Ockren had finished teaching it to me. I can almost make it out, but not quite. And there's nothing more irritating. It's like not finishing what you started out to say. Fluter came up just then, and he too peered at the strange weapon. Comes from a burrow, eh? The bard shook his spiky yellow head and whistled. I suggest getting rid of it immediately. Never had much confidence in things you find in burrows. It's a bad business having anything to do with them. You can't be sure where else they've been and who's all had them. If it's an enchanted weapon, Tard began, more interested than ever in getting his hands on the sword. Shouldn't we keep it? Oh, do be quiet, Eilonwy cried. I can't hear myself think. I don't see why you're both talking about getting rid of it or not getting rid of it. After all, it's mine, isn't it? I found it and carried it out, and almost got stuck in a dirty old tunnel because of it. Bards are supposed to understand these things, Tard said. Naturally, Fluter answered, smiling confidently and putting his long nose closer to the scabbard. These inscriptions are all pretty much the same. I see this one's on the scabbard rather than the blade. It says, something like, beware my wrath. The usual sentiments. At the moment, there was a loud twang. Fluter blinked. One of his harp strings had snapped. Excuse me, he said, and went to see about his instrument. It doesn't say anything like that, Eilonwy declared. I can read some of it now. Here. It starts near the hilt and goes winding around like ivy. I was looking at it the wrong way. It says Durnwin first. I don't know whether that's the name of the sword or the name of the king. Oh, yes, that's the name of the sword. Here it is again. Draw Durnwin, only thou of royal blood, to rule, to strike the... something or other, Eilonwy went on. It's very faint. I can't see it. The letters are worn too much and too smooth. No, that's odd. They aren't worn. They've been scratched out. They must have been cut deeply because there's still a trace. But I can't read the rest. This word looks as if it might be death. She shuddered. That's not very cheerful. Let me unsheath it, Tard urged her again. There might be more on the blade. Certainly not, said Eilonwy. I told you it had a symbol of power, and I'm bound by it. That's elementary. Ockren cannot bind you any longer. It isn't Ockren, Eilonwy answered. I only said she had things with the same mark. This is a strong enchantment that any she could make, I'm quite sure. I wouldn't dare to draw it, and I don't intend letting you either. Besides, it only says only royal blood, and doesn't mention a word about assistant pig keepers. How can you tell I haven't royal blood? Tard asked, bristling. I wasn't born an assistant pig keeper. For all you know, my father might have been a king. It happens all the time in the Book of Three. I've never heard of the Book of Three. Title drop, said Eilonwy. But in the first place, I don't think it's good enough to be a king's son, or even a king himself. Royal blood is just a way of translating. In the old writing, it didn't mean only having royal relatives. Anybody can have those. It meant, I don't know. What do you call it? Something very special. And it seems to me that you have it. If you have it, you don't need to wonder whether you have it. So, of course, said Tard, nettled by the girl's remarks, you've made up your mind that I'm not... whatever it is. I didn't mean to offend you, Ilanwe said quickly. For an assistant pig keeper, I think you're quite remarkable. I even think you're the nicest person I've ever met in my life. It's just that I'm forbidden to let you have the sword, and that's that. What will you do with it, then? Keep it, naturally. I'm not going to draw down a well, am I? Tarn snorted. You'll make a fine sight, a little girl carrying a sword. I'm not a little girl, said Ilanwe, tossing her hair in exasperation. Among my people in the olden days, the sword maidens did battle besides the men. It's not the olden days now, Tarn said. Instead of a sword, you should be carrying a doll. Ilanwe, with a squeal of vexation, raised a hand to slap at Tarn when Fluter Flam returned. Here now, said the bard. No squabbling. That's not a bit of use to it. With a large key, he tightened the wooden peg holding the newly repaired harp string. Ilanwe turned her irritation on Fluter. That inscription was a very important one. It didn't say anything about bewaiting anyone's wrath. You didn't read it right at all. You're a fine bard if you can't make out the writing on an enchanted sword. Well, you see, the truth of the matter, said Fluter, clearing his throat and speaking with much hesitation, is this way. I'm not officially a bard. I didn't know there were unofficial bards, Ilanwe remarked. Oh, yes, indeed, said Fluter. At least in my case. I'm also a king. A king? Tarn said. Sire, he dropped to one knee. None of that, said Fluter. I don't bother with it any more. Where's your kingdom? Ilanwe asked. Several days' journey east of Cardathel, said Fluter. It is a vast realm. At this, Tarn heard another jangling. Drat that thing, said the bard. There go 2 more strings. As I was saying, yes, well, it is actually a rather small kingdom in the north, very dull and dreary, so I gave it up. I'd always loved barding and wandering, and that's what I decided to do. I thought bards had to study a great deal, Ilanwe said. A person can't just go and decide. Yes, that's one of the problems, said the former king. I studied. I did quite well in the examinations. A small string at the upper end of the harp, with a high-pitched tinkle and curled up like an ivy tendril. I did quite poorly, he went on, and the Council of Bards wouldn't admit me. Really, they want you to know so much these days. Volumes and volumes of poetry and chants and music and calculating the seasons and history and all kinds of alphabets you spell out on your fingers and secret signs, and a man couldn't hope to cram it all into a skull. The council were very nice to me, continued Fluter. Taliesin, the chief bard, himself presented me with this harp. He said it was exactly what I needed. I sometimes wonder if he was really doing me a favor. It's a very nice harp, but I have such trouble with the strings. I throw it away and get another, but has such a beautiful tone. I should never find one as good, if only the beastly strings. They do seem to break frequently, Ilanwe began. Yes, they do, Fluter admitted a little sheepishly. I've noticed it usually happens when, well, I'm an emotional sort of fellow and I do get carried away. I might readjust the facts slightly, purely for dramatic effect, you understand? If you'd stop readjusting the facts quite as much, Ilanwe said, perhaps you wouldn't have that trouble with the harp. Yes, I suppose, said the bard with a sigh. I try. It's hard. Very hard, as a king. You get into the habit. Oh, sorry about that, y'all. Take a quick drink. It's like my friend over in Germany. She was like, you should do ASMR. I was like, nah, not good for that. Plus, I don't want people hearing me crunching chips or something, or like popping bubble wrap. Because bubble wrap is fun, kids. It is. It is fun, actually. Even at 30 years old, bubble wrap is fun. Just my own fun fact about myself. Bubble wrap is fun. As a king, you get into the habit. Sometimes I think I pass more time fixing strings than playing. But there it is. You can't have everything. Where were you journeying when Akron captured you? Tarn asked. No place in particular, said Fluter. That's one advantage. You don't have to hurry to get somewhere. You keep moving, and next thing you know, there you are. Unfortunately, in this case, it was Akron's dungeon. She didn't care for my playing. That woman has no ear for music, he added, shuddering. Sire, Tard said, I ask a boon. Please, said the former king. Fluter will do very well. A boon? Delighted. I haven't done any boon granting since I gave up the throne. Fluter, Flam, and Ilanwe seated themselves on the turf, while Tard recounted his search for Hedwyn and what Gwydion had told him of the Horned King and the rising of the Cantreves. Gurgi, having finished his meal, sidled over and squatted on a hillock to listen. There's no doubt in my mind, Tarn went on. The Sons of Dawn must have news of the uprising before the Horned King strikes. If he triumphs, Aurorn will have Prydain by the throat. I've seen with my own eyes what that means. He felt ill at ease, speaking as if he himself were a war leader in a council hall, but soon the words began to come easier. Perhaps, he thought, because he was speaking for Gwydion. I see your plan, Fluter interrupted. You shall keep on looking for your pig, and you want me to warn the warriors of Dawn. Splendid! I shall start off immediately, and if the hosts of the Horned King overtake me, the bar slashed and thrust in the air, then I shall show the valor of a Flam. Tarn shook his head. No, I shall journey to Caerdathel myself. I do not question your valor, he said to the bard, but the danger is too great. I ask no one else to face it in my stead. What do you intend to when do you intend to sink your pig? Asked Fluter. My own quest, said Tarn, looking at the bard, must be given up. If it is possible, after the first task is done, I mean to return to it. Until then, I serve only Gwydion. It was I who cost him his life, and it is justice for me to do what I believe he would have done. As I grasp the situation, said the bard, I think you're taking too much blame on yourself. You had no way of knowing Gwydion wasn't in the dungeon. It changes nothing, Tarn answered. I've made my decision. Fluter was about to protest, but the firmness of Tarn's words silenced the bard. After a moment, he asked, What is your boon, then? It is twofold, said Tarn. First, tell me how to reach Caerdathel as quickly as possible. Second, I beg you to conduct this girl safely to her own people. Before Fluter could open his mouth, Ilanwe gave an indignant cry and leapt to her feet. Conducted? I shall not be conducted where I please. I'm not going to be sent back just so I can be sent somewhere else. And it'll be another dreary place, you can be sure. No, I shall go to Caerdathel, too. There's risk enough, Tarn declared, without having to worry about a girl. Ilanwe put her hands on her hips. Her eyes flashed. I don't like being called a girl and this girl, as if I didn't have a name at all. It's like having your head put in a sack. If you've made your decisions, I've made my own. I don't see how you're going to stop me if you, she hurried on, pointing at the bard, try to conduct me to my mean, stupid kinsmen, and they're hardly related to me in the first place. That harp will be in pieces around your ears. Fluter blinked and clutched his harp protectively while Ilanwe went on. And if a certain assistant pigkeeper, I won't even mention his name, thinks otherwise, he'll be even more mistaken. Everyone started talking at once. Stop it, cried Tarn at the top of his voice. Very well, he said after the others grew quiet. You, he said to Ilanwe, could be tied up and set on Melangar. But, he added, raising his hand before the girl could interrupt, that will not be done. Not because of the commotion you raised, but because I realize now it is best. The bard looked surprised. Tarn continued, There is greater safety in greater numbers. Whatever happens, there will be more chance for one of us to reach Caerdathel. I believe we should all stay together.
And faithful Gurgi, too, shouted Gurgi. He will follow. Too many wicked enemies are smirking and lurking to jab him with pointy spears.
If he agrees, Tarn said, Fluter shall act as guide. But I warn you, he added, glancing at Gurgi and Ilanwe, nothing must hinder our task. Ordinarily, said Fluter, I prefer to be in charge of this type of expedition myself, but, he went on as Tarn was about to protest, since you are acting for Lord Gwydion, I accept your authority as I would accept his. He bowed low. A flam is yours to command. Forward, then, the bard cried, and if we must give battle, so be it. Why, I've carved my way through walls of spearmen. 6 harp strings broke at once, and the others strained so tautly they looked on the verge of snapping. While Tarn saddled Melangar, the bard set ruefully to work repairing his harp. And that is where we will end for tonight. We are on chapter 11 next time. Also, if you all have time, so if for those who remember the first part of this, I was reading the original story of Aladdin, and we will continue reading that tomorrow. So if you all have time in the early afternoon and want to hear a highly animated voice read that story, feel free. And then tomorrow night at 7:30, we will be finishing up Anne of Green Gables and starting chapter 1 of our new book, which will be 13 books in a series that we shall read on Instagram. It, to me, is still very popular. It has a successful Netflix series, a movie that was fairly successful in the early 2000s, and it's about 3 incredibly strong but unlucky children. So let your mind figure out what that series might be. I'll see you next time.